With the home goods market, you need to have these massive environments so people can see your products put on the floor. What is all the surrounding furniture and decor around it? And so we heavily rely on working with influencers, whether it's people we see too or people that are in paid partnerships with us, because we need a diversity of homes, a diversity of styles, a diversity of sizes to help educate our customers on, oh, I never thought about putting a runner in my kitchen. Like, why would I put a rug in my kitchen? Well, you can. One, our product is washable. And two, you can bring some life to your kitchen. So it's actually been a really great outlet for us, not only in the education in terms of how to style different types of homes and different spaces, but also has been a great outlet for content for us to feed our organic social and our paid social marketing flywheel.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ. Here's Conor Begley.
Welcome to Earned. Today I've got Jenna, the CMO of Ruggable. Welcome to the show, Jenna.
Thank you for having me, Conor.
And I got to know you during your Ipsy days. I am proud to see you at a company that my wife and I are customers of, Ruggable, which is an awesome company.
I'm so glad you guys love it.
You don't like every product you buy. And I think this is one that we had bought a couple other rugs. My wife didn't love them. And then she got this one. She's like, this is the one. And now we've got 2 or 3 of them in the house now. So,
well, I'm proud that you guys are a customer, but I also feel like you're going to become one of our cult fans that I've realized Ruggable has a lot of.
Let's actually start there, right? Because you've got a ton of background through Ipsy, et cetera, that I want to hit. But I am curious, home was a little bit of a new category for you. And I'm curious what made you decide after 4 or 5 years at Ipsy as a CMO, why was this the right path?
I think, it wasn't necessarily about moving into the home category. A lot of this was actually relegated to Ruggable itself. One of the reasons I actually had joined Ipsy is because it was a massive disruptor in the beauty industry. It's a subscription business model, really disruptive in terms of leaning into influencer marketing, organic social, and brought something new to the market. And I felt like I saw a lot of parallels with Ruggable. It's a category that's been around forever. It's a pretty nascent category. I don't know that there's been a ton of disruption. And I thought what was really unique about Ruggable is that it really shook up this category. And the founder really did that by inventing this patented 2-piece system where the top is washable. And so many people that have pets, kids, families, sometimes can't participate in having beautiful home goods because they get ruined. And so I love the idea that this brand was really disruptive in this category. I also love that it's a digitally native brand. That's what I loved about working at Ipsy. A lot of my experience on the agency side, I love just kind of working in the digital space because of the ability to, read and react to results, having all that data at your hands, but also to be able to move really quickly. So I think that's kind of why I made the move. And I'd also say I'm personally into interiors and kind of like to think of myself as a little bit of a flea market flipper. So yeah.
That's awesome. The other benefit, just to toot the kind of Ruggable horn as personal customers that I really liked is honestly, something as simple as just making sure the mat doesn't slip out from underneath the rug is a personal pet peeve of mine. But going back to that e-com and kind of direct to consumer focus that you talked about, and I think you've said in the past, it's almost exclusively e-com at this point, but at scale, right?
Yep.
I'm curious, how do you think about these categories, like you mentioned influencer or PR, or some of these categories that have historically were very important to Ipsy? I would imagine you're making them fairly important to Ruggable as part of that too. How do you think about investing in those categories that aren't traditionally categories that direct-to-consumer brands have focused on, right? They've historically much more focused on the performance side of things, the ads. How do you think about investing in that category?
I really think about the blend of performance and brand. And when you think about what beauty, fashion, and some of these other lifestyle categories have done is they have found these pockets of growth and pockets of ways to engage with customers through these more organic channels. And I think, again, going back to the fact that this is a very nascent category, how can we disrupt the industry and start getting the attentions of the likes of beauty and fashion? And so we've very much looked at PR, organic social, influencer, even experiential and upper funnel channels as a part of our media mix that we're going to continue to grow. I think what works really well in beauty is this notion of you have these influencers who are showing you different looks and tips and hacks and tricks, and you kind of follow them and you fall in love with them. And I think in the home space, people are craving, education, entertainment, but also like, how do I design my home? A lot of people feel a little helpless in terms of how they want to style their home. And it's not actually an easy thing because you have to think about how you mix and match things. And so I think it's actually a pretty big unlock for a category that really hasn't traditionally leaned in there. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more of this category kind of copy what other lifestyle brands are doing.
That problem of how do I style my house? I mean, it's definitely the problem my wife solves. Like, I don't solve it myself. But it is a big challenge, right? And it's a fun challenge for some people, not for everybody. How do you guys go about helping people solve that challenge?
Right now, I would say it's probably a couple facets. One, we do have a body of influencers that we work with. And I think one of the biggest challenges I had going from beauty to home is the luxury of beauty is that you can have these like small little intimate macro shots that you're doing, little swatches on your hand. With the home goods market, you need to have these massive environments so people can see your products put on the floor. What is all the surrounding furniture and decor around it? And so we heavily rely on working with influencers, whether it's people we see to or people that are in paid partnerships with us, because we need a diversity of homes, a diversity of styles, a diversity of sizes to help educate our customers on, oh, I never thought about putting a runner in my kitchen. Like, why would I put a rug in my kitchen? Well, you can. One, our product is washable. And two, you can bring some life to your kitchen. So it's actually been a really great outlet for us, not only in the education in terms of how to style different types of homes and different spaces, but also has been a great outlet for content for us to feed our organic social and our paid social marketing flywheel.
To your point, you have to have like a home that you're going to decorate. Like, that's a lot of work and process and effort and just to get a photo.
Yeah. I think about all the shoots I've ever done for fashion and beauty, and it's like you can churn out 1,000 looks. I'm overestimating this, but like 1,000 looks. For home, it's like you can get maybe 6 or 7 shots in a day because you have to style all these different rooms with these large format products. And then you don't even get a diversity of a home, right? You have one style of a home. So you really do have to rely on external partners to help you bring that to life because everybody has different home styles, taste preferences, wants different sizes. So it's a unique challenge that's different than beauty and fashion.
It's funny, my neighbor, like, it was like the first week we moved in, this was a few years ago, and there was like all these moving trucks and there's like stuff going on. I'm like, what's happening? And it was Pottery Barn. They would come into her house and like just take over for like a day or two and like, paid him a bunch of money, I'm sure, to do that. But it was like, oh, wow, like this is a major operation just for a photo shoot of one house.
Yep. Now imagine you have a Spanish style house or a Tudor home, like completely different aesthetic.
Yeah. So I have a question going back to this like subscription model versus the more kind of e-com. Obviously with rugs, your goal is not to sell somebody one rug, right?
Yep.
You want them to become customers for life. They change, styles change, they add more of it to their house. Maybe they buy a second house, they add some there, whatever. And I've always been curious about, and you mentioned this, like with Ipsy, the big thing you focused on was retention, right? Or like reducing churn, which is I've got these people that are subscription customers and I want to make sure that they stick with me over life. And with this, it's a little bit different, but in some ways it's the same, right? Like you want them to stick with you over life. It's not a subscription per se, but it is like that's what you hope that it is generally. And where I've always really struggled with that concept of like marketing for retention, I'd be curious on your perspective. Have you ever read that book, How Brands Grow? You ever read that one?
I don't think so, no.
So this brand got incredibly popular and it's used a lot in CPG. And the basic thesis is that like you can't affect retention. The only thing that matters is like getting people to trial. And then once you get people to trial, that's kind of it, right? The product is what decides whether or not they're going to repeat or not. How do you think about like more retention-based marketing efforts for Ruggable specifically? And maybe even going back to the Ipsy days?
I think specifically in the Ruggable world, what's interesting is you don't have the pace at repeat rate as something like Well, subscription one is already a pace that's sort of pre-built in. You get a monthly box. But beauty or fashion, you have a higher repeat rate. My lipstick ran out, I need to go get it. My foundation ran out, I need to go get it. I want a new white t-shirt. With home goods, it's a big investment, right? And so one, I think the biggest difference I see on the marketing side is it's a longer consideration period where you need to do a lot more education and sort of build up the credibility for someone to make such a large investment, not only in cost, but also in the item and the duration that this item lasts. I think the second thing is when it comes to actual retention for something like Ruggable, because the repeat purchase rate isn't as immediate as something like beauty is, we think about sort of building mechanics to our own product. So one of the beauties of our product is it's a two-piece system, right? It's a two-piece system because we needed to create something that could fit in the washing machine so people could wash the top because we're known for our washable rugs. The other beauty of that is that it's interchangeable. And so that's something we lean into on the retention side. So I'll give you a couple examples. One that I keep pushing my team on is like, we're the rug that grows with you. You think of a child's room, you have a nursery rug, which might be, a little bit more pastel or baby-like. Then they get into a toddler, then they get into a tween, then they get into a teenager. And so having something that you can kind of interchange is one example. We also see that we have a lot of seasonal customers. So someone wants that Christmas rug or they want that pumpkin spice latte rug. We got it for you for the holidays. And so we see a lot of people do that interchangeability. And so I think that's one example of how we use our product in a way to keep that repeat purchase rate coming. We've also just stepped into some adjacent categories. So we recently launched pillows. And so we're really thinking about any assortment that we create, how does that pair with your anchor piece, which is your rug? And so that's another way to kind of get that retention wheel going for us. So it is critical to our business, but definitely understand the dynamics of, how do you balance this new customer acquisition on one side and just like keeping that wheel going while also really catering and building this avid community and fan base of your existing customers.
It's really interesting to think about the kids rug market, just because I'm in that phase right now. As a kid, you actually rotate the look of the room more often, right? Like,
yeah, I'm in that phase. I got out of crib phase and now I'm into like toddler phase. And I'm like, I know this is not going to last. I still get to pick right now, but it's going to eventually not be me picking anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Have you guys thought at all about the retail side of things? I don't see any reason this has to be like an e-com only business.
Yeah, definitely exploring and thinking about the retail side of the fence. I think we feel like there's still so much more opportunity on the e-com side, but it's not something that's out of the question for us.
Yeah. Let's talk about you a little bit specifically. So, you've been in this CMO role, Chief Brand, Chief Marketing Officer role for almost a decade, right? 7+ years across 7 Jeans and Ipsy and now Ruggable. I'm curious, when you're coming in as a fresh-faced CMO versus the grizzled veteran that you are today, like how have you changed? How has your approach changed from kind of then till now?
I think the biggest thing for me that I've learned, and I think it's what's made me a stronger marketer, is I really started out more on the brand creative side of the fence. And I think a lot of that has to do with when I was in fashion, our business model was, 50% wholesale, 50% direct to consumer. And even within direct to consumer, I'd say like 10% of that was e-com. The rest was our owned brick and mortar. And so brand plays a huge role there because it's like you have to get your brand out there, get the awareness, get the recognition for people to go to Bloomingdale's or for people to go to your physical store. That side of the fence really taught me about building these beloved brands. How do you create something that's unique, distinct, that people can fall in love with and create that consistency? So ideally, you're creating this emotional connection with your customers. And then I think on the second half of my career, especially as I pivoted into Ipsy, which is a very data-driven organization, it was really about understanding the performance side of the fence. And performance is, how do you get those clicks? I need something so thumb-stopping that you're going to stop in your tracks and click into it. And then once I get you to click into it, how fast can I get you through that funnel to convert? And those two things separately can kind of be like oil and vinegar. But the beauty of bringing those things together is where the magic actually happens. And so what I really feel like I'm able to bring to the table, and the biggest things that I've learned now is how can I preserve the integrity of brand? How can I make sure that we are doing things that have that emotive connection to our customers so they do come back and repeat? And then how do I take that performance lens of what are the mechanics that make things work, whether it's the design and the layout, whether it's the architecture of the content. I will say like one can't live without the other. And I think so many companies are trying to figure this out. Like, do I hire a growth-led marketer? Do I hire a brand-led marketer? And like, no one really has the right answer yet, but they can't live without each other. Because if you just do performance, the well will dry up. You will just keep hitting all of these people until there's no one left and they have no reason to come back and fall in love with your brand. And if you just do brand, you're going to kind of miss the mark in terms of what is it that's getting people to click to engage. And so you do really need both sides of the fence to make it work.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is I think you almost always see that with people that come into as a CMO, right? Like they come in from one side of the fence or the other, right? In terms of what their specialty is. And so it's cool to hear that you kind of rounded out your skill set in that regard. But usually you just hire somebody who's really strong on the other side to be a VP, right? And like you say, hey, this is our SVP. And like, I'll help support you, but this is kind of your thing. So it's cool to hear that you leaned into that.
And look, I will 100% say like through and through, my DNA is more on the brand side. Like I love creating a rich brand, understanding the customer, creating an engaging community, really understanding what's happening culturally and being in the zeitgeist of everything that's happening. I've had to learn that side of the fence. And I do. I augment where I don't feel like I'm the strongest to have a team to really drive that.
So let's keep going on your marketing philosophy set of things. I have things that I say all the time, right? And my team hates me when I say those kinds of things. But they are very indicative of like your philosophy in terms of what you believe about marketing. And I too am much more of a brand marketer. What are the things that you say to your team all the time? Like, are there certain things that they like roll their eyes? Okay, yeah, I get it, Jenna.
I had one I used to say all the time at IPSY, and I've been trying to hold back on bringing it to Ruggable yet, but I'm sure it will come out of my mouth. I don't even think I could take credit for this, but I think really the mantra I have tried to live by is get comfortable being uncomfortable. One, we're in a space just in the digital world where the evolution is insane, right? Like things are changing every single day, out of our control, algorithms, new social media platforms, a million things. I think on top of it, marketing is constantly evolving and changing, which is so challenging to kind of keep up with. And so you just have to sort of build this mentality that you're going to be constantly growing, constantly learning, constantly adapting, and it's going to be wildly uncomfortable. I mean, I'm uncomfortable all of the time, and it's sort of like you have to live with that uncomfort to know that it's like it is what's helping you grow. I think that also leads to probably the way I like to work in the sense of really trying to build the muscle around reading and reacting to the business. Back in the heydays of retail, it's like you'd set an annual plan 18 months in advance, and then you'd execute on it, and you'd sit and wait. And I'm like, what are we doing? We're sitting and waiting. We're sitting ducks. And that was a big change for me from like retail, where it's like, all right, the plan's out there, good. Now it's like, what happened last week? Who's posting what on TikTok? What's changing on this side? Who is this influencer that just got canceled? And you just have to like be in it and be like, all right, like now what are we gonna do? How are we gonna shift it? How are we gonna change it? It's fun and it's a wild pace, but I also think it's such a competitive advantage to be able to do that in a business.
Yeah, I mean, the pace of culture like is just wild, right?
It's crazy.
Being able to operate at speed, I think, is generally one of the advantages of being smaller, right? There are disadvantages, but one of the advantages of being smaller or more nimble, and very hard to build when you are bigger. Even at IPSY's scale, right? IPSY was fairly big scale. I mean, you guys are what, 1,000 employees, 2,000 employees, something like that?
It's huge. And I mean, I think the advantage we had at IPSY is we really leveraged organic, social, and influencer as an outlet to be on top of those types of things, where it's a lot harder to do that in the mechanics of your business. Like every so often be like, okay, that product's trending. We can get it fast enough to get it in our boxes. But I think the challenges that a lot of physical good retailers have is like, there's just a time frame in which you can get physical goods out there. And so how do you utilize other mediums to participate in those trends? I will say one thing that we've been doing, and this is a bit of the muscle that I've been trying to build at Ruggable, is how does a rug company participate in this? I actually have a couple of examples of them, but I'll just give you one of them is Beyonce drops Cowboy Carter album. Western wear starts taking over the world. It's on every single runway. Announcement to launch less than 30 days. We have a Yeehaw cowgirl doormat out there with a bedazzled cowgirl hat. Like, how do we just like get in these things as fast as possible as a rug company and be able to sort of rapidly iterate and react to like what's happening in the social sphere.
Yeah, I mean, I think two of the marketers that I've been really impressed with, one was his guy named Terrence, who's the president of Stanley, and really took them from being like, they were at nothing to 10x in 3 years, literally 10x revenue in 3 years after being flat forever. And prior to that, he was a CMO at Crocs. And then I think if you look at Corey too, at Elf, right? Like the number of collaborations they're cranking out is just insane, right? And I think that's a lot of what defined Crocs and a lot of what defined Stanley. And I've seen you really lean in there as well, right? You've got the Goop collaboration, you did some with Hilton, you've got Jungalo, Bridgerton, like you're cranking them out. You haven't been there that long. What is it about collaborations that you've decided to lean into? And then what is required to do something like you said, like, hey, from zero to we've got product that you can buy in 30 days and a whole campaign around it. What does that engine look like?
One, I can't take all the credit for this. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that's been happening on this. So it's not because I came that all of this happened, but I love them because I think it really takes a page from other brands like beauty and fashion. We also just launched Pantone today, so another one's out. But, I think one, the way that we've built our business model, again, to really think about sort of these like pods of teams that are able to read and react to trends. There is upfront strategy around like, what are the right types of partners? What is it that we're hoping that they will do for our business? Do they bring in new customers, returning customers? Are they helping round out our portfolio of styles? But, we really sort of built this machine around a super tight end-to-end process of design, review, 360 marketing, how are we bringing this out to market and launch, and then a quick read and react. Did that thing work? Did it not? Why did it work? Why didn't it? Bridgerton's a good example of we launched when the season dropped, blew our expectations out of the water. Like we had no idea it was going to be this successful. And we're like, holy shit, this thing is working. What are the best-selling styles? How do we recolor them for the next drop? Because they broke up the season drop. And so that's exactly what we did. We dropped it with first season. We had a ton of content out there. We worked with Netflix and did like a Netflix Bridgerton wedding. Like it was crazy. And then we dropped another set of colors for the next season drop. And so like those are the kinds of things where it's like, how can you build flexibility in your overall system? Because it's not just marketing. Like this is a lot to do with product ops. Like there's so many things to be able to have that read and react lever to do. So yeah.
Again, it sounds like a mixture of like a little terrifying, but really fun. And in some ways, you kind of instantly catch people's attention when they go, oh shit, like what is this? What is this company? You could do it in a way that's like cheesy, right? But you didn't. And I think that that's kind of the key, that balance, right? Speed, quality, alignment across the organization, but also the brand alignment. This is really cool. And I think it's fun to see it happen more and more, right? Like as a consumer. And in some ways, I think that it's very difficult to do it when you're not a direct-to-consumer e-com brand, to your point. Like that's a big advantage that you have as a brand like that.
And I know I've lived through this where you are so beholden either to supply chain or retail partners, which is why I think it's like, if you're a successful DTC brand that's in e-com, it's just like, how do you take very thoughtful approaches to get into other channels? Because it's a shift of the business model and it makes it a little bit more challenging to have more control over your own destiny.
Yeah. So one of the things you asked me before we hit record was whether or not I had washed my Ruggable rugs, right? And I thought that was interesting because when my wife told me about the rugs, I was like, oh, cool. She didn't ever mention anything about washing. But when I Googled the brand and prep for this, like I was like, it clearly shows up. And by the way, she texted me. She has washed her Ruggable rugs. She asked, like, why are you asking? I'm like,
so just don't worry about it. They're washable.
I'll tell you later. So she has definitely used that main attribute. When I think about a product, you get like 1 or 2 bullet points in any consumer's head. There's a very small number of things they're going to remember because they've got 10,000 other brands and other things to remember. So how do you go about deciding on what that is going to be? And where I think this is interesting is I think you said that like, half the people aren't even washing the rug, right? So like, is that even the right thing to emphasize? Like I actually thought of a different attribute personally. Talk me through that process, how you think about it.
I think the first thing is really deeply understanding your customer segments. I mean, that's probably like my first few months here, spending a lot of time deeply understanding them, understanding what makes them ticks, their behavior, how we're acquiring them, how they're repeat purchasing. And then I think it is about how do you serve up what message to whom without getting into like crazy personalization, which can sometimes have diminishing returns. That's probably the first place we start. We did a ton of research around our customers. And I think what's really interesting is, one, not a lot of people even understand what a washable rug is. We're still educating people on what a washable rug is, and it is probably our number one USP. And I think the reason that's important in our category is there are a lot of pet parents that can't participate in having beautiful items because they're terrified of them getting ruined. And we are trying to democratize that. So it's like, just because you have kids and just because you have a pet doesn't mean you can't have a beautiful home you're really proud of. And so I think that's like an amazing opportunity for us to do. I think the second thing that we've learned is like, it doesn't matter the functionality if the design sucks. It doesn't matter. No one will buy it. And so it's this delicate balance of, I need to educate you on the functionality side, but at the end of the day, what's going to sell you is the design, right? Like that's probably what sold your wife. And that's why our collaborations are so interesting. And even our own in-house designers is we're able to compete at a level that our competition may not be able to keep up the pace with, because we can create all these unique, beautiful designs that no one else has. Oh, and by the way, it's functional. So if your dog pees on it, great, cool, we got you covered.
Totally. So it's interesting, like in some ways, the design is actually the main benefit, but that's not what's being emphasized, right? Yeah. That's not the most important part.
It's a balancing game, and it depends on who's coming in. And if it's an existing customer, I don't need to educate them that they're washable. Now I can just lean into design.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, like the pace of marketing, kind of how it's changing. I'm curious for you, what are the areas that you're looking at over the next year and being like, hey, I think there's a ton of opportunity here, right? Whether that's like TikTok or Snapchat or LinkedIn or email marketing or more brand marketing or billboards. What are the areas you're like excited about and pushing the team on?
Where I'm really having our team take a look is, one, on how do we diversify our channel mix a little bit more so that we're not so reliant on bottom of the funnel performance marketing. I really want to make sure we're thinking of a full funnel approach, because I think we've gotten really good at performance marketing, but as I said, you got to kind of fill that funnel. You can't just be going after the same people. So definitely looking at some upper funnel channels, in the likes of even TV. I think the other piece of this is, how can we really amplify and throttle up our influencer marketing and organic? Because it is this beautiful flywheel. Like I think of this Venn diagram of paid social, which we're really good at, organic social, and influencer, and they all sort of feed each other and they create this beautiful symphony. You have influencers who are sort of their own media channel in their own right, but they're creating content that feeds organic social and feeds your paid side. You have organic social, which is using that influencer content, but is also a way to educate and engage customers to have them think about coming back again. And also is learning from paid, and paid's learning from organic. And then you have the paid side where you're using all of the learnings from both of these or the content from influencer, and that's really driving the clicks. But sometimes people are seeing that and then go to organic. And so there's this sort of like beautiful symphony that I think we've gotten really good at the paid side of the fence. And I think we are good at organic and influencer. I think we could be great and just like really get in that flywheel singing. So that's one other place I want to really spend some time with the team. And then lastly, we talked a lot about retention. Now that I'm really understanding the mechanics of our LTV, our repeat rate, how can we re-engage our existing customers? And whether that's through our existing products or new products or other things, I think there's an opportunity to just, really get people that fell in love with us for the first time to continue to fall in love with us.
Yeah, because the people that chose to buy from you the first time, like did so for a reason, right? They had some belief in you. And so staying top of mind for them just clearly has to have value generally. And what's interesting on the TV side of things, I just had the managing director for creators and for shopping at YouTube separately on the podcast. And the thing they said that was crazy was now YouTube has, I think it's 1 billion hours a day spent on YouTube in the living room, on your TV, not on your phone.
Crazy.
Actually, this is kind of random, but I just don't know anything about it. So I'm curious if you're doing it, and if you do, how well it's working. Do you guys do catalogs?
We don't do catalogs. We've done a lot of testing in direct mail. Like the first thing I thought of, same thing. I was like, okay, what's the best use case for rugs? How about when people move and they have to redecorate their whole house, right? I think it's a harder nut to crack because I also think people, once you move, you're inundated with a ton of stuff that's coming to your house. What is the right time frame in which you engage them? Is it 3 weeks after they move in? Have they already bought the furniture beforehand? And so it's trying to figure out like the time frame of it. But I do think catalog in general is interesting, especially as we think about just broadening our category. Like that's the other question I always have is fashion can do catalogs, so they have like 90 categories to show. Beauty can do catalogs, they have 90 categories to show. Like what happens when you're a single category? Are you going to get enough bang for your buck for the cost of doing it? But it's something I'm really interested in testing into and kind of figuring out for us because it feels like, especially because design is so prominent in what we do, that there should be a way to make it work.
Well, I really appreciate you taking out the time. I'm going to do one fun kind of end of show question. So other than rugs, what is your favorite kind of home decor category? What's the thing that you like? What are the catalogs you actually read and just like scroll through? Or maybe it's not home decor at all. I don't know.
Can I say shoes? Is that part of it? Just kidding.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It can be anything, really.
I mean, my guilty pleasure is shoes. It's actually funny. Like I didn't read my LinkedIn profile for so long, and somebody like messaged me out of the blue, and they're like, "Love your LinkedIn profile." And it was all about like living in someone else's shoes. And then I say I'm like obsessed with shoes. I'm like, I wrote that like 10 years ago, but it is true. I'm like obsessed with shoes. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. I think what's interesting, and again, not the reason why I went to Ruggable, is of all the decor, I think that the place I have spent the most time and I've cared the most about is rugs because it is such an anchor to the like visual aesthetic of your room. I also have loved collecting rugs traveling. So had handmade rugs made from Morocco. Like everywhere I go, I love to have like a little bit of that like cultural vibe brought back. And I feel like there's something like really cool in the fact that there's like heritage and design inspiration in rugs from all around the world. So funny enough, when I got to Ruggable, I was like, I have 21 rugs in my house. Now, some of those are like bath mats and doormats, but I'm like, well, I have a lot of rugs. I didn't really think about it. This was probably like a rug on the wall over here too.
So the best question is, if you have 21 rugs, how many pairs of shoes do you have?
Oh my God, we don't want to get into that. My husband would be like, I'm sorry, what? How many do you have? Are you hiding them and rotating them so I don't see? A lot more than 21, put it that way.
Well, I really appreciate you taking out the time. So excited for you and for Ruggable. I think it's really cool to see you jump into a new category and excited to see everything you guys are going to do together. It's going to be great.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. This has been a blast.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.